Hi, this is Maryland Comptroller Peter Franchot. I may not listen to every podcast out there, but I do listen to the Maryland Crabs.
Live from a grungy kitchen table located in Annapolis, Maryland's scenic and historic capital, it's the Maryland Crabs Podcast. With each episode, your hosts, Tim Hamilton, John Frenay, and the occasional guest will dive in and pick apart the stuff that really matters most to you. We're too lazy to actually solve any of these problems, but we can definitely stir the pot. From schools, politics, parking in the fire lane, to those horrible people who drive BMWs. And here with this week's episode, live from the kitchen table, Tim Hamilton and John Frenay.
We're here at the Commons today, and we have Todd Rosenthal with us. And you can't Google him because he's kind of ungoogleable because he's a security guy. And
I'm a pretty good Googler, though. I can find out what all your ex-girlfriends are doing. I'm not kidding.
Well, Todd is a security expert. He works for he's a security principal at one of the largest government contractors, responsible for keeping tens of thousands of people and assets safe across the world. And protection is always a topic that's on everybody's mind. It has been forever, certainly here in the Annapolis area in the last couple of years since the shooting at the Capitol Gazette. We thought it would be good to talk with an expert who, fortunately for us, lives in town. You are a local Annapolitan, so welcome and thank you for coming out.
No, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Your background, I mean, you know, how did... Take us, where do we start? Okay, you're a Marylander. Before we started, you were saying you're from Montgomery County, and
just know that when I say I'm from Montgomery County, he makes fun of me, but he didn't make fun of you because you're a really big guy.
But it's really cool. You got to call it MoCo.
Yeah, well, yeah. Well, they're making all this stuff in D.C. too. They're making up all these neighborhoods.
Well, I'm done with that because my daughter lives there now.
Oh, so now she's
now it's cool.
Yeah, now it's cool. Yeah, I guess.
Now, how do we get to Annapolis? How do we get into security? And what's your background?
I actually never wanted to go into security or even this field whatsoever. My lifelong dream was actually to be a doctor. I grew up with a family member of mine that was a mentor who was a physician, and I always grew up from a very young age knowing that I wanted to be a doctor. So I actually, when I was a senior in high school, started applying to medical school and pre-med programs.
Right.
And actually went and ended up at Fairleigh Dickinson University.
Up in Jersey.
Yep, Madison, New Jersey. Fairly ridiculous, as some people call it, but I actually
played you guys in basketball. I went to St. Francis College.
We were division. We had interesting enough.
You had D1 basketball.
We have D1 basketball, yeah. But everything else was D3.
Yeah, that's where we were too. Yeah.
Yeah. Fast forward, because I'm a pre-med student, I'm taking a first aid, first responder, like an EMT type of class.
Sure.
They thought that would be a good prerequisite to get me familiar with some of the other classes that I'd be taking. So I was a certified first responder working on my EMT license. It is a second semester. First semester was an interesting year because that was September in 2001. So
yeah, I vaguely remember something happening.
Yeah, so it was pretty interesting being in New Jersey, so close to everything happened. I mean, I remember standing on top of our dorm and watching the smoke fill up in the sky. And at that point, it was just so surreal. So watching kids freak out because they couldn't get in touch with parents. I knew a couple kids who lost their parents. So be that as it may, second semester, it's April. The actual date was April 14th, and it was probably at about, I want to say 7 or 8 o'clock in the evening in my dorm at Fairleigh Dickinson, co-ed dorm. It was kind of L-shaped. We had boys on one side of the L and women on the other side of the L, but we would all commingle and hang out. And I remember getting a frantic knock on my door from a public safety officer. Fairleigh Dickinson's a small school,
sure.
3,000 people at that time, and public safety was oftentimes law enforcement students who had taken basic first aid and stuff. He called me and he knocked on the door, and he said, hey, sorry about that. He knocked on the door and said, hey, Tiffany is not breathing. Can you please come down? And Tiffany was a girl that I knew very well. I'd been hanging out with her roommate for some time. One could say we were kind of dating. And I went down to Tiffany's room, and I'll never forget the first thing when I walked into Tiffany's room was just this very odd, musty smell. It was a very damp, musty smell.
A basement, something like that?
Yeah, very similar to a basement, or if you're kind of walking through a fog outside, a little bit moldy and musty. I didn't think much of it. College dorms get kind of dingy and gross.
Sure.
Could have been spilled beer, but it's interesting because I can not remember what I had for lunch yesterday, but I can remember everything in her room, everything in that room, everything where it was, that the lamp was tilted to the left, the shade. So she looked like she was sleeping. So I went over, and I was expecting to see someone choking or something like that. First responders are taught when someone's not responsive to do what's called a chest rub. And it's where you take your knuckles and you rub it on their sternum relatively hard because it's uncomfortable. And if the person's typically conscious, they'll move, they'll flinch, or they'll grunt. Correct. So I went to go do a chest rub because she wasn't responding verbally. And I pulled on her shoulder a little bit so I could get ready to do the chest rub. And her body just kind of moved towards me like a door. Rigor mortis was clearly set in.
Wow.
Yeah. And I panicked. I absolutely panicked. At the time, I'm like 17 or 18 years old. I'd never seen anything like that before. I wasn't anywhere near emotionally prepared for this. And she was gone. So in come all the law enforcement officers and the cops. But I remember the most overwhelming feeling was this feeling of hopelessness, of powerlessness. No matter what I had done, I couldn't bring her back. So turns out that night, her boyfriend, who was someone that we actually hung out with, he went to a different school, huge guy. I mean, I'm 6'3". He's about 6'6". He was a basketball player, and she broke up with him, and he lost his cool and decided he was going to strangle her to death. And they deemed it they deemed it a crime of passion. But he panicked, and what he did was, in the midst of strangling her, her neck broke and fractured her vertebrae, which she coughed up blood and bled on the sheet. So he quickly balled up the sheet and threw it under the bed, and then left an alibi note that said, "Tiffany, I left while you were sleeping." So here we are, a small campus, and now we're just truly just shocked. I actually couldn't sleep for quite a long time. Actually, to this day, I still have nightmares where I'm still trapped in her room, and I'm trying to figure out how to go about doing this. But I said before, the feeling of powerlessness for me was unbelievable. And at that point, I realized that even if I became a doctor, nothing could have brought Tiffany back. Nothing could have helped the situation. Nothing could have helped anybody. So what could I do? I was asking myself, what can I do? How can I fill the emotional void that will enable me to A, get over this, and B, help other people? So that led me to crime prevention.
It seems like a fairly reasonable jump.
Sure.
I mean, when you're that close to it, and somebody that you know and care for is, when they die, it's just difficult. But when they die under the circumstances, so that makes sense. So that got you into crime prevention.
Sure. And
did you end up with a criminal justice?
I actually ended up I stayed with a communications degree. I focused on criminology. A little bit different than criminal justice, and ended up pursuing my master's degree in semiotics and communications. And semiotics really is the study of signs and symbols and how the human brain interprets them based on our personal backgrounds.
Interesting.
Like what?
So, for example, if I give you a red rubber ball, and you play with a red rubber ball every day, that's just a red rubber ball to you. Okay? But if it's a red rubber ball that I religiously throw at your face every day, it becomes an association with pain. You'll flinch rather than try to embrace it with your hands out. So we call that your textual history. Based on your textual history, you're going to interpret that ball completely differently. So it's really studying signs and symbols throughout communication and language and how we interpret things differently.
It's interesting.
After that, I started applying to internships. I applied to the U.S. Secret Service, the FBI, the ATF, and the DEA. And I ended up taking one, oddly enough, with the Secret Service at the advice of a professor, because we were on the brink of a big campaign season. Mm-hmm. And so I started at the United States Secret Service as an intern, and then worked as a co-op. And I was assigned to the counterfeit squads and special crime units, which was pretty interesting. Got to do some really interesting things and learn about a lot of interesting people. And at that point, I wanted to be a Secret Service agent. That's what I said to myself I wanted to do. And my mother said, I don't want you doing that. It's not really something, I remember I wanted to join the...
it's always mom.
Yeah. I remember I wanted to join the Marine Corps when I was really young, and she told me Jewish boys don't do that. Yeah. So I ended up getting offered a conditional offer of employment with the Secret Service Uniform Division, which would have been stationed at the White House. And I decided to pursue graduate school instead.
Well, and now you are responsible for the safety of tens of thousands of people.
Correct.
I imagine with a team of people, I don't think you're probably not the personally responsible, but...
No. Although some days it does feel that way. But
well, you've got a wealth of background in, kind of what we thought about talking about this episode is just how to keep ourselves safe, and we're in so many different ways that we can be in danger. I can be at home watching the World Series, go Nationals, and I could be in danger. I could be walking down the street out of a bar at midnight if I could stay up that late and be in danger. Getting $10 out of the ATM. Certainly identity theft jumps in there, and as we all know, mass shootings, they don't discriminate as to where they happen, and we learned that. And I would probably venture to say probably on June 27th of 2018, the 38,000 people of Annapolis probably felt mass shootings were something that happened someplace else. And
well, statistically, they do. I was telling that to my kids the other day, because you're going to be hearing this next weekend, but this week we had an incident or I wouldn't call it an incident, but we had a rumor that went across Annapolis High School about a mass shooting, and some parents kept their kids home yesterday, and I didn't, because I got to toughen my kids up. They got to figure out what to do.
It's scary.
But I was explaining to my kids, I said, look, statistically, when you have something like 80 million children go to school every day, and multiply that times 5, so 5 times 80 million, that's units, and the number of mass shootings that are in like once a month, or even if it was once a week, the chances of something happening are astronomical. But then you have a mass shooting in our little town, and you're like, oh, it does happen.
You don't want to deal with astronomical odds when it happens. That's great for statisticians.
Right, doesn't make the families feel any better.
For anybody else. But Todd, let's talk. Let's sort of hit those at home. What are some of your suggestions, tips to keep safe at home? And I guess that, I have been, and Tim will make fun of me for this, but I was robbed twice. I won't mention.
I know, it was hilarious. I love when he gets robbed.
But
I hope he gets robbed tonight.
My house was broken into twice within about 6 months. And obviously, you feel violated and whatnot. I felt kind of good the second time because they didn't get anything except for a handful of change, but that was fine. But how do you keep yourself personally and your home safe? What are some of the tips that you could offer?
Sure. So I think everything, whether it is keeping yourself safe at home or online, or when it applies to an active shooter, everything boils down to situational awareness, being aware of your surroundings. So when it comes to your home, understand your home, be aware of your home, know where your entry points are, obviously your front door, your back door, where are these vulnerable spots in your home, and what can you do to protect them? So, for example, I always tell people, even if you don't have a dog, put up a beware of dog sign at your house, okay? Dogs take away the one thing that all criminals want, and that's the element of surprise, okay? Sure, we've had people in history who don't necessarily want that element of surprise. They enjoy the chase more. We're talking more about like serial killers, Jeffrey Dahmer, the BTK killer.
Cat burglars also like to go in and when there's people there.
Right.
Cat burglars. I figured someone dressed all in black with a little mask.
Well, that's the definition of it, I believe, isn't it?
Absolutely. So, and it's really understanding your home, understanding what you have that is an asset to somebody else? What is somebody going to take? Okay. There are little things you can do. Obviously, locking your doors. Okay. When you're traveling, are you putting your lights on? Who's getting your mail? Are you freezing your mail? Okay. There's simple things you can do when you're home. Okay. If somebody rings your doorbell and you can see whether it's through your Ring camera that's on your phone, or you can see through a window that's above the doorway, and you're home alone, make that person think that you're not home alone. Okay, you can do that by either turning the TV up, or you could even say, "Hey, you going to get the door?" to let them think that there's somebody else in the house with them.
That's stupidly simple and brilliant. Just over your shoulder, "Hey, I'll get it."
Put down your gun and get the door, please.
Exactly. There's other little things you can do. I always advise people who don't have a burglar alarm at their home, if they have, which most of us do these days, a fob on their key that'll set off their car alarm. The whole idea of a burglar alarm is to help get the attention of those who can help you.
Right,
a neighbor, the police, once they get there to identify where you are. So if you have someone coming into your house, or possibly coming into your house, hit that button on your key fob. Okay? You're worried about waking up the neighbors when it goes off any other time. Now that's what you want to happen. Now you want them to wake up because you want them to come to your aid. So it really boils down to situational awareness. I'm always stressing to personal clients and companies, if I'm doing consulting work for them, whether you're at home or you're in your office, it really boils down to situational awareness. So, windows, trees, and shrubs. Some people, in terms of crime prevention, will tell you to keep your shrubs extremely clean because that will enable a would-be crime doer to hide. You want to keep them clean so they can't hide behind bushes. I actually say you want to keep stuff there because it makes it more difficult for them to get near windows. You really want to make something...
6 of one, half a dozen of the other.
Yeah.
Plant some roses. Something with lots of thorns.
Exactly. People oftentimes underestimate their second floor. People are surprised and alarmed by how many burglars or home intruders will actually come into a second level window or
a second level. I was
second
thinking
level
about that because the time of year we are right now, it's cooler at night, so we kept the windows open, and so my wife and I, our bedroom, we're 15 feet off the ground, so we have the windows open, and my kids will too. But then when we leave during the day, there's a porch roof above my kids, and I think, well, people could scale the tree, get on the roof, and get in. So those are the windows I lock. I mean, I should. Well, now that I'm saying this out loud, I'm gonna lock all of them. So nice try. Sure. But yeah, that's the sort of things that I always thought about. Is going, well, wait, it's a lot easier to get in the second floor on this side of the house than that one, and I just never really thought about it before a couple of years ago.
And I think the biggest myth that people lose sight of is statistically most home burglaries take place during broad daylight, when people are not home, when people are at work. Okay, so that goes into start, talking about what we call in the security industry OPSEC. OPSEC, if you're from, of the military mind or you're former military, OPSEC means operational security. And what that is, it's really a 5-step process in which you identify what the adversary may want. So at home, it's a 5-step process. What does the adversary want in your home? Okay, is it money? Is it cash? Whatever the case may be, you're taking preventative measures to make sure these things don't happen. And that OPSEC bleeds over into so many aspects of our life. It amazes me, you talk about home security. Well, people can't even keep their cars secure. Okay,
all the time. Unlocked car.
Yeah, and it's not, and you're 100% right. And it's not just the unlocked car. Think about, I've got a neighbor who has so many bumper stickers on the back of their car. Actually, it's not so many, but it drives me nuts every time I see it. It's about 3. And I can...
Republican or Democrat?
Libertarian. Is that safe? So, and these bumper stickers, one of them says, proud parent of a child at whatever elementary school, okay? Another bumper sticker is one of those family bumper stickers. And it has a stick figure family. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
And it's got, on that stick figure family, it has a female, and she's filing her nails. It's got the husband, who's standing in military uniform and holding a looks like it's a high-powered assault rifle.
I see where this is going.
And then it's got the two kids. One kid's holding a soccer ball, and the other one looks like it's she's doing like trapeze or whatever. And then they've got a dog. Well, I know everything about your family now. I know where you're going to be. I know you're going to be picking your kid up at soccer practice. I now know where your kid goes to elementary school because it's on the bumper sticker. Your husband's in uniform. There's a good chance he's out of town a lot of the time. This is a perfect opportunity for me to come learn more about your family.
Yeah, all I got to worry about is the dog.
Right.
All right, so now breaking the house. So if I'm a burglar, I'm going to make a beeline for the bedroom because I want to get to the jewelry. I don't want to waste. I'm not going to steal TVs or anything like that. I'm going to go up to the jewelry box, go into the walk-in closet, go into the top drawers of the dressers, maybe even the nightstands, because I figure that's where everything's going to be, right?
Sure.
All right, I'd be a good burglar. Want to do something
In
tonight?
case that job's not working out for you.
I know, right?
Good deal.
So
Happens to me again, I know where to go.
Yeah. Or maybe the freezer. Maybe they're a freezer guy. Maybe that's not ice cream. Maybe that's where you're keeping your Rolex.
How long does just say somebody's kicked in a door or something, whether it's during the day, and obviously they've gotten some cover, whether they do it from the back of the house or the side of the house or something like that. How long do you have any idea how long a burglar stays in a house?
Well, it's interesting. What I tell people is when people say, well, my house is only so big or my house is only so small, I say, listen, and the answer to your question is anywhere between 2 and 5 minutes. It varies. But I don't know how big your house is, but if I gave you a 2 to 5 minute time frame, could you run through your entire house and grab a couple items along the way?
Oh, without a doubt.
Absolutely. We're not so much worried about them taking big flat screen TVs.
They're so cheap now anyway. No one's buying them.
Yeah, I know, right? Or, bigger, larger appliances.
Right. It's the money.
It's the money. It's the jewelry.
Guns.
Absolutely. Guns is a huge one. Okay.
Medicine cabinet.
Yep, medicine cabinet. We've got a huge problem with drugs and opioid abuse, okay? People are targeting as much painkillers, as much opioids as they can possibly get so they can turn around and sell it.
And that 2 to 5, that is, I'm going to presume that's the time it's going to take a cop to get there. By the time, if you have an alarm, that the alarm company calls, verifies that it's a legitimate alarm, calls the police, they dispatch it, and an officer gets there. Probably... probably 5 or more minutes.
Sure. And here in Annapolis, I think, we have a relatively decent police response time versus other places, say Detroit, which in 2013 had a 58-minute response time. Yeah. They've gotten a little bit better. I think they're now at 19. The national average for police response time is 9 minutes.
That's still a long time.
Well, especially if you got somebody running through your house, if you happen to be there, or if you're waiting for an ambulance or, in a car accident. 9 minutes seems like forever.
Absolutely. 2 minutes seems like forever.
Let's slide into moving on to the street, okay? And Annapolis has if you look at their reports, there's so many like rapes that are not reported, but they've had a significant increase in the number of rapes over the last couple of years. And you see, you see jackasses getting into fights on streets, and that's whatever. But how do you, as a person just walking, how do you keep yourself, and you've said situational awareness. As you're walking down the street, you want to make sure that, but again, what are the tips that we can look at?
I think one of our biggest downfalls in terms of situational awareness these days are our cell phones. We are so connected. We are always either talking on them, or we are texting, or we're checking Facebook, or we're looking at, our news on our phones. And that disconnects us. That breaks off a couple of our senses that are needed to maintain optimal situational awareness. So if I'm a would-be crime doer, I'm going to look for the person who has their head buried in their phone, who is walking, trying to dig something out of their purse, and is also talking on their phone, holding it up with their shoulder. Okay? That's a vulnerable position. Think about where you're walking. Think about how you walk. How are you carrying yourself? Okay? Body language is huge.
It's like the old schlep rock. What was that? What was Flintstones? Didn't they have schlep rock? Was the little guy would walk in and be like, "Oh, hi, I need
like Eeyore from Winnie the Pooh." Yeah. It's a huge aspect, of becoming a target or not. Okay, large sums of cash. Are you carrying them? Are you displaying them? I don't really go to an ATM anymore. Okay, I try to avoid it at all costs, but there are little things out there that can really help us along the way. You talk about an ATM. How many people actually know that the little mirror that's on an ATM is there for your personal safety? It's a convex mirror to help you see your surroundings next to you, to your right and your left. Everybody I've asked before.
That's the little round mirror that's on there, on the machine, that I thought was just a mirror to hold their camera to protect their assets.
Yes. John smoothing his hair down,
Everyone thinks it's a hidden camera. That's right. So, no, it's there to help you. So, but think about how you carry yourself, okay? Where are you walking? What time of day are you walking, okay? Are you walking late at night? Are you walking in the morning? Are you jogging, okay?
I'm not going to go there because I got in trouble last time I questioned why somebody was out at 4 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, you took heat for that, and I love that.
So, people go running, people go jogging. But again, it's a perfect opportunity for someone to, catch them off guard and tackle them. They're already out of breath, okay? They don't necessarily have a lot of energy to expend, especially if they're on the last wind of their run. They're distracted because I know when I exercise, when it actually happens, I have headphones in, okay? Cutting my senses off.
A very good friend of mine 25 years ago, she's very petite, and she's very attractive. This was when you had Walkman. You didn't have cell phones now. But she was in Western Pennsylvania, and she was jogging early in the morning, not too early, around 7. And this is in rural Pennsylvania. And she got dragged off the trail. She didn't hear it, and she was sexually assaulted. And it was because she was not aware. I mean, who would think about that at 7:30 in the morning?
Sure.
Just jogging like in a trail in a town. That was a safe town. You just would never think about that. And I talked to her after that, and she said the same thing. She goes, I couldn't fight back because I was just so taken off guard. It just seemed like it wasn't happening.
Sure. So, I think going out to, discussing more in terms of being out and about, you start getting into, everything from social gatherings, okay? Huge. You mentioned rape earlier, and that, you think about rape, I think I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure that this is the statistic. 90% of rapes involve alcohol.
I would say, yeah.
I'm surprised at that.
That's a pretty heavy statistic and a scary one. There's also a very high percentage of rapes that involves with women that they know their aggressor. Okay? And I'm not saying that it's a relative or a cousin, but it could be a handyman who have scoped out their house. Okay, so folks, be careful about who you let into your home. Be selective. Think about, if you're potentially in a vulnerable position, utilize the buddy system. Always tell people. Better yet, I ask them, if you were to go missing or something were to happen to you, who would be the first person to notice? Sometimes people say, well, I don't know. Well, that's a problem.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a problem. Utilize your buddy system. Make the proverbial needle in a haystack a little bit easier. Let people know where you're going. There's absolutely nothing wrong. I don't care how old you are. Nothing wrong with telling your mom, hey, I'm just letting you know, we're running out over here.
I got into it with my kids when they were like 21, and they were like just coming home for the weekend. And they're like, well, what time are you going to be back? I'm like, Jesus, Dad, what do you... I said, I don't care where you go. I don't care who you're with. I don't care what time you're coming home, but you're still my kid. And I just want to know if you're coming home at 3, that's fine. That way I know if it's 5 o'clock and you're not home to worry. If it's 3 and you're home, I'm cool. But you're right. I mean, let somebody know.
Sure.
That's as simple.
Yeah. Always let someone know. Utilize the buddy system. Okay. Don't always think about necessarily, you're walking to a car. There's nothing wrong with saying, hey, you mind walking with me to my car? I don't care if you're male or female. Everybody gets targeted. Everybody can be a potential victim. I mean, the statistics are scary. I mean, 2017, there was a violent crime every 26.3 seconds.
Well, they say that, and when you're walking on the street or you're walking to your car or something like that, I mean, you don't have the element of surprise. The bad guy does. I mean, he's the one that is you're just ready to get your key out or click your car open, and all of a sudden, somebody's there. You don't expect somebody to come out of here.
Sure. So you're talking about, I remember before I said that key fob for your car is a great thing to draw attention when you're home alone. Can also get you into a lot of trouble. We're what I like to call a very fob happy society. We have a lot of fun and we get some sort of weird enjoyment out of when we're however far from our car, whether it's 250 feet or 250 miles, we push that button because we enjoy seeing the lights go and we enjoy the boop, boop.
Yeah, I like that.
It's fun for us. Well, somebody's in the garage and they're a potential carjacker or they want to abduct you. That's their indicator now that your car is unlocked, especially if you're not even at your car yet. So I advise to wait until you actually get to your car to unlock it.
Okay, you're just like freaking me out here at this point. I mean, you're making perfect sense.
Well, I am not getting carjacked because I have a stick shift, so I'm good.
But I mean, again, even if it's not unlocked, you've now identified a person that is coming toward a vehicle that is identified itself. I mean, there could be somebody hiding behind the car as opposed to in it.
And what I try to explain to people when I'm working with people, when I'm going to their homes and helping them, or if they've hired me to help out their kid be more aware of their surroundings, or I have a lot of parents who hire me to come talk to their kids before they go to college, specifically females, to help prevent sexual assault. What I say to a lot of these parents will say, God, this is making me paranoid. And I'll say, hey, just out of curiosity, do you have a CPR certification? A lot of them say, yeah. I said, this is very similar to being CPR certified. People who are CPR certified don't go out and about hoping to find someone in cardiac arrest to give CPR to, right?
Right.
But when it comes to CPR training, it's better to have it and not need it than need it.
Got the skills to save somebody.
Correct. And need it and not have it. And I equate the education that I can provide to people the same way. It's really to help you be prepared physically, mentally, emotionally, not to make you paranoid.
Does it make sense to fight?
Depends on the situation. Absolutely.
I'm getting somebody sticks a gun into my back and says, "Give me your wallet."
So you face lots of different. But yeah, quick answer to your question is what you always want to do. If it's really the wallet that they want, what you instantly do is you go what's called de-escalation mode, and you put your hands up. That's where the old we see it in the movies. Put your hands up. That lets that person know you're not a threat. Okay, they have a gun, or you think they have a gun, then you put your hands up. If they want your wallet, be verbal with them. Never, ever stop talking to somebody.
This sort of goes like getting pulled over by a cop today.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm getting my driver's license.
Exactly. But the reason why you don't necessarily want to stop talking to them, it all comes down to something called the OODA loop. And this really applies to every aspect of whether you're being attacked at home or it's an active shooter. The OODA loop is what's called observe. It stands for observe, orient, decide, and act. It is a process that the human brain goes through. It's been studied. It's an actual biological process. To do anything, you have to go through the OODA loop. Okay, so if I ask you to take your pen to paper and start jotting down your phone number, you have to observe the pen and the paper, okay? Then you have to orient. You have to figure, okay, the pen is so far from the paper, I have to orient to get it over here, okay? Observe, orient. Then you have to make the actual cognitive decision that you're going to carry out the act, okay? Observe, orient, decide, and then you actually do the action. If I interrupt that OODA loop, it takes 1.29 seconds for the human brain to reconnect. So by talking to somebody, you are, in essence, disrupting their OODA loop. If they have a mission to take your wallet, to pull you into the back of the van, and you start fighting, or you start communicating with them, or start even just saying, a lot of times people say, well, in that situation, I'm not going to know what to say. Well, just do a Fred Flintstone. If you can't get anything out of your mouth but that, their human brain is going to be disrupted. You're breaking that OODA loop, and that's huge when it comes to being attacked. Someone's taking you to the ground, their fight or flight mode is going just as much as yours. Their adrenaline is pumping. Therefore, they're breathing likely in and out through their mouth. That very simple act of taking something as simple as if you're outside and you pick up a leaf and sticking that into their mouth Okay, if you can't physically take down this person, you're breaking their OODA loop, because their mind, their brain goes from hurt, maim, abduct to there's something in my mouth. What's in my mouth? Okay, they have taste involved. Their senses are now focused on that. And biologically, their tongue is going to start trying to push that object out. Now you've got 1.29 seconds to figure out what you're going to do next. Whether it's you're going to knee them in the nuts, or you're going to hit one of these soft tissue points, whether it's their eyes or their nose or their neck. Okay? And the object is to evade the situation, escape. If you're able to get one of those areas, if you're able to incapacitate them temporarily, that doesn't mean that you're going to now get up and say, ha, 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 and continue to kick and bludgeon them to death, okay? Your ultimate goal is to respond with equal force and get the heck out. Protect yourself.
Without a doubt.
Yeah, it's funny. My brother went to Fordham University, which is in a pretty rough neighborhood of the Bronx. This was back in the early 90s, mid-90s, and he's a big guy, and he's physically fit. He's he was boxing at the time, just really big guy, and he was out at night, and he was out drinking, and he was walking back to his dorm, and he said this guy slipped out of the alley, and he had a knife, and the guy was like half my brother's size. My brother's big as I am, and the kid wanted money. And I said, well, what? He called me the next day. I said, what did you do? And he goes, well, my mind was just racing. He goes, it all happened in a second. And he goes, I'm looking at the knife. I'm gauging how fast he is, how far he is from me, how fast I can kick that out of his hand. He goes, if I kick that out of his hand and I can lay 3 jabs, he's down. So I said, what'd you do? He goes, I turned and ran. He goes, I just sprinted. And he goes, I could hear him behind me for like a block and a half. And he goes, and that just gave me more of a charge. He goes, but I went from fight to flight, he said, instantly. And he said all plans just went awry. He goes, because what if I missed? What if I kicked and missed? And he's got the knife. He goes, it doesn't matter how big he is. If you got a knife, you're plenty big enough, or a gun.
And that's why mental preparation and situational awareness is key. So, yeah, you're going to get caught off guard, but you've thought about it before. And I can't stress enough, for people who are threatened or getting robbed to give up a purse or a wallet, throw it.
That's what I was just thinking, yeah.
Throw it away from the person, even if you can get it behind them. Because if that's really what they want,
they're going to go for it.
Yeah, they're going to go for it. The stuff in the purse, stuff in the wallet can be replaced. It might be a pain in the butt. You're going to have to cancel your credit cards, but that can be replaced. Your life can't.
Right. You mentioned people hire you to train their kids and make them aware of schools and whatnot. And I mean, obviously, online and kids are synonymous almost anymore. And you mentioned about that we live our life on our cell phones. What are some of the things that we can do for protecting our identity, which is, I mean, nobody's stealing your wallet and taking your driver's license to Xerox it anymore to steal your identity. That was so 1980s to get into the bars. But what are our options for protecting our identity and to keep kids safe online?
Sure. First and foremost, I'm a huge proponent of locking down your social media as much as possible. And even, any online account you have, whether it's your bank account or your Facebook or LinkedIn, or the database that you use to pay your mortgage, whatever the case is, set up two-step authentication. Two-step authentication.
I hate that.
It's a pain in the butt, but you know what? It does a really good job. The other thing I really need to stress is people don't realize the information that we put out there.
I was thinking about that the other day. I could tell you everything about most of my friends and just casual acquaintances, when they were traveling, when they were gone, what their kids were doing. Their kids are all over it. I was just thinking about that the other day going, I know so much. I know more information I need to know about everybody, but if I wanted to screw their lives, I know a lot of information about people in general, much more than we used to.
Sure, and that comes hand in hand with home robberies and stuff like that. Because if you go on social media and your profile is set to public and you're posting pictures of your trip in Hawaii with your whole family, that's great. Hey, your home's empty.
16 hours before I see you.
Yeah. So think about the information that you put out there. Okay, you have a new car, that's great. Make sure you cover up your license plate, okay? There's lots of stuff that we put out there that we refer to as PII, which is personal identifiable information. You can do so much with that. I challenge everybody to go online and go a little bit further than just Googling their name. Go to what's called a people aggregator, okay? A people aggregator is a website that pulls from what we
Those
call...
are crazy.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. They pull what's called the deep web, not to be confused with the dark web, which is a totally different beast within itself. But they pull from the deep web. So you have people aggregators that are, to name a few, there's one called Bin Verified. Another one is called People, PIPL.com. There's Spokeo, S-P-O-K-E-O.
Spokeo will tell you, it'll tell you the person's age, where they lived, everywhere they've lived, by cities, who their friends are, friends and family, and their ages. So you can just leap from one to another. Like, if you know if you're trying to get to somebody and well, they were married to this person, you can go from report to report. And this is all free, by the way. And you can pay a little extra to get more. But you can find out a shit ton about people just through that.
Yeah. And think about your home address, okay? If somebody has your home address, which 9 times out of 10, they can easily pull off your dog's tag, okay? If you have a dog or a cat, how many of us actually say, no, you can't pet my dog? Of course we do. We live in Annapolis. We love people to pet our dogs, okay? We love hanging out downtown drinking our coffee. Well, what's on your dog tag? It's your home address 9 times out of 10, okay? Go online, type that address in. I guarantee you I can see the blueprints of your house or the old floor plans from Redfin.
Plus you made friends with the dog.
Right.
Smart.
So the information that we put out there is so detrimental. And it's hard to get rid of, okay? A lot of these websites have, privacy policies, and it basically says right there that they own that information. You can write to them and you can try to get it off, but once that information's out there, it's out there. So we have to do our best to try to minimize the information that we put out there about ourselves and especially about our children.
But our kids, when they're on social media, they have no concept of privacy. I always say baby boomers, and it's changed, by the way, baby boomers did not embrace social media at first because they're like, why do I want people to know anything about me? And now they're just as bad as everyone else, Gen X and millennials and Gen Z. But I think I'd like to think that boomers and Gen X are a little more cautious. Maybe they're not. But I look at what my kids put out there, and it's sometimes I got to sit them down and talk to them. You can't say these things. You really give away too much information.
Sure. You talk about the generational transition, which is pretty interesting because, I grew up, my dad's a history buff, and he had a poster in our basement, and it was one of the old war propaganda posters, and it said, loose lips sink ships. Well, now you think about it differently. Loose tweets sink fleets.
Nice.
Okay.
Adapted.
Right? Pretty interesting. So we really need to be cognizant of the information we put out there. We also need to be cognizant about the apps that we use. Okay? So let's say we all have all these online accounts. So we all have 100 different passwords. They're really hard to remember. So, all right, you're thinking about downloading a password app, one of those password management apps. How many people who download that app go and actually read the fact that the company that started that app is in China? Have you read the Privacy Act?
No, nobody reads any of the terms of services.
That's the biggest lie in the world is I've read and agreed to the policy.
Right. Okay. What about geotagging? So many people love posting and geotagging on Facebook, okay? You can't even lie anymore. I can't even take a picture of my wife says, hey, where are you? And I want to say, hey, I'm, still at work when I'm actually sitting chowing down on a Big Mac. And, and then she looks through my phone. If I took a picture of it for some reason, she can see the timestamp and she can see the geotag. She can see where I was and when it was taken.
Bitch, you were cheating on the diet.
That's right.
You were eating a Big Mac.
So the information we put out there is absolutely incredible. Okay.
But can you do anything about it at this point? I mean, I guess you can go deep into the settings of the iPhone, like real deep, and you can turn off some of that tracking. But can you really turn off all of it? I mean, most of it's for marketing use. But like you said, you can hack it for some reason.
These days, I don't think that it's possible to completely disconnect and unplug.
And I think, do we get to a point, there's someone I'm trying to get on the podcast who's an engineer, and he's an expert in this, and he refuses to have social media. He refuses to have Alexa or any smart speaker in his house. I got a smart speaker in every room.
Yeah, I think that's like saying you refuse to go to the shopping mall because you're afraid of a mass shooting. We have to live our life. I don't have a digital assistant in my house. Like Alexa or...
I love them.
I think...
That's because you got 2 kids.
Yeah, I have 2 kids, So, there's some slight paranoia on my end about, hey, who's listening? How can this information be used? But, overall, that's, the digital assistants are the least of my concerns, measured up against like social media and our kids who are doing things like Snapchat and Fortnite and playing against strangers and communicating with strangers. I almost said perfect strangers, but I don't believe in perfect strangers.
That's a great show, though. Balky.
Balky? Cousin Larry?
Yeah. I'm going to totally binge that tonight.
So it's pretty incredible. And, I hate to say it, but shame on these parents who are giving their kids full access with no monitoring on social media. These kids are getting into so much. These kids are unintentionally putting so much of their lives at risk and in danger.
It's legitimate. You live in Annapolis. And I hear it all the time that Shell gas station at Hillsmere and Forest Drive always has skimmers. Allegedly. Now, I use that gas station nearly exclusively and have yet to have a credit card compromise that I believe happened there.
My credit card gets compromised, and we're very careful, 4 times a year. And I will not say where I get gas on Forest Drive near that intersection that it happens, but it's too much of a coincidence. And I check for skimmers, and if people don't know what I'm talking about, they're physical devices that are around the slot that you put your card into that scans the card as the machine scans it. And it's not generally the people who own the device that do it. It's people who, they fabricate them and put them on top. But whenever I put my card in anywhere, I'm pulling and prodding that thing like so hard that the guys usually bark at me to take it easy. But I want to see if it's attached correctly.
So what I would always recommend doing, if you're going to be using an ATM, go inside of the bank, okay, where it's hard to set up something like that. Or even go into, a giant food or the Safeway and use the ATM that's inside of an establishment.
But you know what I do now? I'm trying to avoid ATMs, not just the charges, but because I'm so paranoid. Because it's not even I'm paranoid. The bank's going to eat it. I don't care. But I got to change literally 40 websites where I have automatic pay from Easy Pass to Amazon, and it's such a pain. So when I go to Giant and I go shopping, at the end I just get the cash because I don't have to pay a fee, number one, and it's completely safe.
Sure. Or, hey, Mark Zuckerberg just announced that he's doing this whole weird new cryptocurrency, right? Hey, pretty soon we'll all be paying in peanuts, online peanuts.
In Zuckerbucks.
Yeah. What's it called? Libra or something like that?
Yeah, I think that was what it is. And I guess the other thing that we've really got to talk about, and you mentioned it very briefly, is mass shootings. And, God, unfortunately, they are absolutely everywhere. They are in churches, they're in schools, they're in newsrooms, they're, at rock concerts, they're at country concerts, they're everywhere. How do we, and I think it's probably, I can't say how do we protect ourselves against them, because I don't think there is a way that we can protect ourselves from them, but how do we minimize and increase our safety if we're ever put into a situation like that?
Sure. So I think
do you agree with that? There's no way to protect. I mean, is there a way to protect the 3 of us here if there was a mass shooter that came in? I don't think so.
In this room right here where we are?
No, we're done. Yeah.
Absolutely, there's a way to protect us.
Okay, let's talk about how.
Push John in front of us.
So we go back to, that's a great idea.
Well,
and then what we can use him as a human shield.
Right. Yeah. He's had a good life.
Good. Yeah. Can I get your glasses, though?
That's fine.
We go back to what we talked about with that OODA loop, okay? Observe, orient, decide, and act. And it's all about breaking the focus of the shooter, okay?
I'll interrupt here because this is very similar to what happened with the Capital Gazette. They say that Wendy Winters picked up a recycling bin, which is, you don't think of a recycling bin as a big shield or something to be able to defend, but they do say that they believe that the distraction that she offered with that, when like, hey, I'm going to, throw a recycling bin at you, distracted the shooter enough to allow people to get out.
Well, along those lines, there was this story in Hawaii when George Harrison had that home invasion about 15 years ago, or before he died, obviously. If it was after he died, it wouldn't be as good of a story. But they had a home invasion, and George Harrison was in the middle of the night, and he started throwing stuff, yelling, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. And he was just throwing this stuff, and when they arrested the guy, they said, well, why'd you do that? And he goes, it just seemed something that would confuse him. Yeah. And it did.
And it also depends on the situation.
Your word may vary.
Right. Well, I mean, I guess what I was saying, yes, we can protect ourselves during the action of a shooting. I mean, I don't think we can prevent. There's no way that we could prevent a mass shooter from coming in here, other than armoring the building to do it. Okay, with the assumption that we can't do that. I mean, it can happen anywhere. It can happen in my kid's school. It can happen in my workplace. It can happen anywhere. When it happens, these are the actions that we can take. We can interrupt the
OODA loop. Yeah. So it's
like a post cereal.
Yeah, an OODA loop.
We're out of the OODA loops. And chocolate OODA loops.
That's right.
Makes the milk all chocolatey.
So I think the shootings aren't going to stop as much as we hope that they will.
No.
This is the next wave of this is the new wave of terrorism. This is of domestic terrorism and foreign terrorism. So if the shootings are not going to stop, so we have to adapt and we have to prepare. We have to be mentally prepared. We have to have these difficult conversations with our churches, with our offices, with our families, with our employees. So, we have to have a plan in place. If this were to happen, what are we going to do? Who are we going to contact? But you have to be mentally prepared yourself, okay? I've heard so many times about school shootings where students have said, oh, well, we thought someone were banging on the lockers.
Yeah.
Okay? You have to be able to identify the threat. Okay, that's the most important thing, is identifying the threat. How are you going to actually identify that there is a threat? Okay, is it going to be through social media? Is it going to be a text on your phone? Is it going to be the sounds of screams? Okay, if you're walking through the hall and you heard someone, what you thought was banging on the lockers, and then you see blood on the floor, okay, well, it's not fun and games anymore. There's likely something going on.
But I think it's the way the human mind processes. And it's funny you bring this up, because I was thinking about this yesterday. I was in a boring meeting that was just droning on, and we were in a conference room that was on ground level, and there was glass windows that led right out to the yard. So if you smashed through the window, you would just step out and you could sprint. And we were right by the lobby, and the lobby's kind of echoey, and so we couldn't hear it, but I heard loud noises. I heard someone kind of yelling. Now, it could have been someone on the phone, someone laughing or anything, but for about 3 seconds, I wasn't sure, because you heard yelling. And then my mind started to drift, and I was thinking, how long will it take before we made the decision to throw one of these chairs through that expensive plate glass window? Because I think we are conditioned that we're in a workplace, that you stay calm, that nothing's going to happen. But at what point does your mind say, holy shit, someone's shooting this up, we've got to get out of here now? And I think that we all would hesitate in that moment. Unless you heard gunshots, you saw the flash of someone with a gun, then you act. But in those moments leading up to, your mind just doesn't accept it, I don't think.
Sure. And every situation, there's no such thing as a uniform active shooter situation, okay? And we've, as society, have come to refer to it as an active shooter situation, okay? Well, it's an active killer situation, because what's stopping them from coming in with a knife or an IED, an improvised explosive device, okay? It's an active critical incident, okay? A critical violent incident. We have to be mentally prepared. So it's not just understanding how are you going to respond. It's understanding, okay, where are your evacuation points, okay? Where are you going to evacuate to? Do you have a designated rally point, okay? When you hear the sound of gunshots, you're going to have to think, and step by step, and strategically make a decision. Is it safe for me to barricade where I am? And barricading is literally using every way, shape, or form to barricade yourself into the room to make it difficult for the killer to make his way in. I say his because
the majority.
99.9% of the shooters are males. So barricade, that's one option. Okay, evacuate. Well, can you safely evacuate? Can't you? If the shooter is right to your left, you're not going to evacuate right to your left. Okay, you're going to barricade, or you're going to need to fight. You're going to have to fight, and you're going to fight with your life. Okay, you're going to aim for those soft tissue areas. You're going to do everything you can possibly do to try to incapacitate the shooter. That means using makeshift weapons, okay? If you need to grab a fire extinguisher to distract them, use a fire extinguisher to distract them. If you distract them, escape. Don't put yourself back in harm's way by going back after them. Don't be a hero. This is not the time to be a hero.
Look, but typically in a mass shooting, with a barricade situation, will that discourage a shooter?
Yes, unless
because is that because it's too much effort? I mean, they're looking to cause as much damage as possible, and now this is a locked door.
Sure.
Whatever's in there, I don't care about. I'm moving on. Is that the mindset typically?
So, yeah, the people in, there was testimony from some folks in Columbine in the classrooms who were able to successfully lock some of the doors. They recall and had testimony of the door, hearing the doorknob jiggle, and then the shooters moving on to the next room that was unlocked.
You're not looking for an escape room puzzle. They wanted something quick, and then they move on.
Unless they had a personal vendetta about a previously established target. If they're going after a specific teacher that they know is behind that door, and that's the whole reason that they're carrying out the shooting, and they have a focus on that one individual, then they'll do everything in their power to get in there. But they also know that the police are on their way. And people have to understand that when the police arrive, the police are not there to help you or save your life. They're there to help you, but they're not there to provide first aid. They're not there to help you out of the building. Their first and top priority is to take out the shooter, which is why it's so important that if for some reason, I don't care if you are the most trained marksman in the world, if you are able to get that shooter's weapon, get rid of it. Put it in a trash can, kick it to the side, because when the police come through, they see someone with a gun, they're not going to think twice.
Who it is.
They're not going to think twice who it is, and now you're dead.
I think if you're looking back into the Capitol, I mean, and you talked about the police being on their way, and we talked about response times a little bit earlier. They were talking that they were in the building within like 3 minutes, and there was a sheriff that was just happened to be locally, and it was a perfect situation for a response. And I think that's probably what happened with the Capitol shooter, is that he didn't have any time to do it. I think that the quick response of our police force here to be able to get in there, and again, when they came in, that was the distraction and whatnot. He was hiding under the desk, from what we understand, was probably saved an awful lot more lives as well.
Sure.
Do you know where the first mass shooting was in modern times? You should know this.
Where the first mass shooting was in modern times?
Yeah, like the first active shooter, that's what we think of today.
What's modern times?
Last 30, 40, 50 years. But what kind of started all of them?
I would say with the Columbine was really, the snowball.
I'm talking workplace, like that sort of thing. It was at IBM, right behind WJ in Bethesda.
Oh.
Your high school. See? The little sneaky thing there.
Yeah.
But that was that before you were born, because I'm like about 15 years older than you, I think. And it happened in the 70s. Those were really all fields. There was WJ High School, and there's IBM was this large building in the middle of these fields. There was nothing there between there and Montgomery Mall.
Gosh, I never knew that.
And there was a mass shooting. The guy was a disgruntled employee, and that was before it was all the post office workers, which became going postal. And that was in the early 80s. This was in the late 70s, and he came in and he shot a few of his coworkers, and it just stunned the country. Everyone was just rocked back because this didn't happen. So even right now, where it's just a huge social meme, where it's on the backs of all our kids, especially in the backs of their minds. But at the time, it was something new. Sure. And now that we're actually talking about, what to do if this happens, like it's a possibility. And it's a pretty big indictment. I got upset when after the synagogue shooting in Pittsburgh. Everyone was upset, obviously, but I didn't like what Trump had said about that. And I'm not picking on him, but what I didn't like was this almost blaming them for not being hard, not making themselves a hard target. He said, well, they didn't have a security guard. They didn't have. I'm like, is that where we are as a country? That every house of worship, every school, everything is that we are going to be barreled down like we're in Bosnia in 1992? I just don't know. Can we live like that?
We live in very different times.
I don't know if we do. I'm going to say this right now. I think the number of shootings have absolutely increased, but I just think that with the mass media, that these are visuals that are incredible. Columbine, Sandy Hook, the West Paducah, Kentucky, Pulse nightclub. These are shocking numbers and shocking images. But how many churches do we pass on the way here to get here? Probably 20. Yeah, probably more than that. And then you have libraries, you have schools, to fortify the entire country. And there hasn't been, as shocking as the Capitol incident was, and it changed this community forever. can we live like in this kind of fear? I mean, I think it's one thing where we say we got to prepare for it. You have to have it in the back of your head. And I do. When I go into a movie theater, I look to see where the exits are. When I'm in a building like that or a concert, I always look to see where the exits are. I don't think about it much, but I know where the exits are. And maybe that's that awareness, that situational awareness you talk about. But I don't want to dwell on it like this is like where kids are afraid of it, where you had kids who didn't go to school yesterday because of a rumor that the school also said was absolutely untrue.
Right.
We're in different times, I guess, but I don't want to get to where we're just scared of everything.
Sure.
It's a weird time.
It's a very weird time, and it's very scary. I want to go back. You mentioned Pulse nightclub. Mm-hmm. I think it's important. We were talking about evacuation. I think one of the, a majority of the people who lost their life in Pulse nightclub were actually hiding in the bathroom. Okay, that's why, for me, I personally disagree. The government is really big on the platform for a response for active shooters: run, hide, fight. Okay. Well, if you hiding can be pretty difficult. Okay. If you hide and it's in an appropriate spot, like the bathroom stall, like a majority of the victims were in the Pulse nightclub shooting, yeah, they're an easy target. They're sitting ducks.
I think they backed off that as far, and I'm using a colloquial they, but now they say fight. Don't try and hide. Just fight, because the hiding has not worked so far.
Yeah. Evacuate, fight, barricade. So, you have someone who's physically disabled and they're in a wheelchair, for example, okay? And they hear, the guns go off and they have a poster in their office that says run, hide, fight. How are they going to feel? Right. Okay? So we need to do a better job of training, okay? And when I say training, again, it's not like drilling this into everybody, okay? It's being socially aware of what can potentially happen, be socially aware of the threat, and make sure that we have open communication with people, okay? What are the key indicators, okay? What are indicators of someone who may carry out a mass shooting?
That's why I make friends with everybody at work.
Okay.
I'm not kidding.
Yeah, we have to be aware of that.
I go, hey, who wants a soda? You? Yeah. That way if something happens, I'm like, I got you the soda.
And report that information, okay? You give that to law enforcement. My training is in no way, shape, or form a substitute for any law enforcement agency. They do a phenomenal job, and it's extremely important that people maintain in communication with them.
It's funny, you talk about, the situational awareness. And as we start to wrap up here, a friend of mine named Terry Riley, who's passed away now, but he was a security consultant for the cruise lines. And his favorite line was, I wrote it down here, it said, the only person responsible for your safety is you. And, he said, you don't rely on the police to keep you safe. You don't rely on the lock on the front door to keep you safe. And again, that ties in with what you're saying, Todd, with the situational awareness, that you need to know what to do. I need to know, how do I get out of here? How do I do this? I mean, if we were barricaded in this little conference room, as you said, we're sitting ducks.
Yeah.
What do you think is the biggest threat to our safety? And I'll use safety as a big balloon word today. Is it online? Is it violence? Is it?
So I think they all come hand in hand. You say online, we could be targeted by violence through our online behavior. I think that right now, the thing that has changed over the past 15 to 20 years is our online activity. We are so distracted. We are uptight. We are not as in tune. I think that in terms of personal safety, we need to be a little bit more holistic. We need to put the phones down. We need to spend more time with our families. We need to keep our head up and look at our surroundings and be aware of our surroundings, be socially aware.
That's good advice. I'll tell you what, as we're wrapping up, if people want more information, want to pick your brain, want you to come speak with their sons and daughters as they head off to college, if they want to come and see what we can do for our homes, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
The best way to get in touch with me is via email, and that is T, as in Todd, Rosenthal, my last name, ROSENTHAL. The number is 427@gmail.com.
And I'll make sure we put that in the show notes so people can just look at their smartphones because they're not looking anywhere else, and just click on it and send you an email. But there's an awful lot to digest here. There's an awful lot to think about. Is there anything that is burning in your mind before we push stop on the record, and that you want to let me, Tim, anybody know?
Just really want to extend my appreciation for you all having me here, and just to remind everybody that you don't have to be a victim. Make yourselves aware and spend time with your families. It's so important that we spend time with our families, and don't be paranoid. Just be aware.
Do I have to spend time with my family?
It depends.
I have teenagers.
Or you could spend time with my family.
You have younger kids?
I do.
Let's do it.
Parents,
all right.
It's a totally different podcast. Todd Rosenthal, thank you very much for your time this evening. It was great information, and hopefully nobody ever needs to use it.
Absolutely. Thank you.
This has been the Maryland Crabs Podcast with Tim Hamilton and John Fernay. Sure to follow them in all the regular places, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and online at themarylandcrabs.com. Take a moment to rate us on iTunes. Now, get the hell out of my kitchen. Seriously, go!
You're still here? It's over. Go home. Go.